Greetings, my friends. This is Archanis, and today we're going to go over a concept called Rule Zero. Rule Zero is, in broad terms, the idea that in a tabletop role playing game, though it has been used in some other contexts as well, the narrator or GM of the game is the one who has ultimate say. So when Rule Zero is invoked, it means that whatever the GM says is what goes. There is a lot of different contexts in which Rule Zero can be used, and some of them are good and some of them are bad. The important thing to remember is that what takes even more priority than Rule Zero, it's called Rule Zero because the implication is that it takes precedent beyond the basic rules of the game. But what has even more priority, I think, for a positive experience for everyone involved is that the tabletop role playing game itself should be a fun and collaborative experience. So you want to make sure that even when Rule Zero is being implemented, it's being implemented in a way that allows the game to progress and allows people to be having a positive and fun experience. The reason why this is important is because there are a number of circumstances, unfortunately, when players may end up with a bad GM, a GM who maybe they are railroading the party, or maybe they're just very vindictive or mean-spirited, etc. Hopefully that isn't the case, but it is very easy in those circumstances for Rule Zero to basically be used as a way for a bad GM to just have things go their way, even if it's to the detriment of the players. The important thing to keep in mind is that Rule Zero is mostly being used in the context of helping to reinforce boundaries, allow players to implement common sense or logic, or to think things through more, or to help the game stay fun or within the agreed upon rule sets, expectations, or theming of the game itself. So what this could mean, for example, is that maybe you have some players that are busy arguing over like a certain niche aspect of the game. Maybe they're arguing about like how much damage like a certain thing should have done. Maybe the GM is being involved in this conversation as well. But either way, once it starts to become like disruptive to the group or starts to detract from the overall gaming experience or is kind of grinding the game to a halt, that's an instance when a GM can use Rule Zero to be like, okay, this is how much damage this thing has done. This is what we're going with. Rule Zero, we're moving on and continuing to progress with the game. Rule Zero can also be used, as I stated, for boundaries. So this can mean if a player is trying to argue, for instance, maybe there's someone else at the table who is arachnophobic, and one of the players is playing as a druid and wants to shapeshift into a spider, then the GM can say, Rule Zero, there is someone at this table, or they don't need to say that. Rule Zero, we stated that we're not having spiders in this game. You are unable to shapeshift into a spider, for instance. This can also take place very often if there are, for instance, rules lawyers or other players in the game who are kind of being real sticklers about certain aspects of the rules or trying to manipulate the rules to break certain elements of the game in a way that would put more attention on them and make it a less fun experience for other people. And that's another place where you would be able to implement Rule Zero, saying like, okay, I know this is the rules as written, but this is the rules that we are playing as because it will make the game better for everyone else involved. Or I know you want to make an extremely powerful broken character, but Rule Zero, we are going to interpret these rules in a slightly different way so that everyone feels like they are able to contribute to the overall game. Again, Rule Zero can also be used just to remind people of established norms or the established setting of the game. Like I've had a number of times when players will continually try to reference or bring in stuff from, like, say, the contemporary world into a medieval fantasy setting. And it's like, rule zero, sorry, there's no guns in this universe. The guns have not been invented yet. I don't care that you as a player know what a gun is. That doesn't mean your character knows what a gun is. Or it can even be other things such as, references to things like pop culture characters. And there's a time and a place when those can be implemented. You want to be able to still allow your players to have fun, maybe even allow them to make references to some contemporary media or other media that they want to be able to experience or have enjoyment from. And then you as the GM can try and reflavor that so that it fits the setting better. But you also need to be able to maintain boundaries. And in a certain way, Rule Zero really serves that function of maintaining the boundaries and expectations that were set in session zero or at the beginning of the game. Aside from that, Rule Zero can also be helping to maintain the tone of the game. There might be players who are just have a very chaotic sense of humor and might be trying to interject all sorts of random things into the game that kind of completely shift the tone of the game. Maybe you have a more serious game, but someone has like a joke character, or maybe they're just doing really outlandish, absurd things that are completely contradicting the tone of the game. Again, this is where something like having those discussions ahead of time are important. Like if you've established with the group, hey, this is the tone of the game that we are playing, then that's what you want to maintain. And then if someone tries to do something that completely disrupts that tone and disrupts that flow of the game, that's when you would bring in Rule Zero to be like, okay, we're not doing this right now. But Rule Zero is a powerful tool, and you want to make sure that it doesn't get misused. You want to make sure that when you are implementing a rule that states you can't contradict what I just say, that the motivation behind why you're doing it is for the betterment of the play experience and the overall collaborative story that you are making with the players. Otherwise, it ends up becoming much more of a tool that takes away players' agency or can take away some of the more fun and enjoyable elements of the game. I've also seen Rule Zero be used in order to implement kind of, as I said before, some common sense logic. This is less common in my experience as a slang term for Rule Zero, but you can still utilize it in the same way that in other types of games, or when someone is watching a movie or playing a video game, for instance, someone could be critiquing the way that the world or the narrative works, and you can just say, use your suspension of disbelief, in which case Rule Zero kind of fills that similar niche of, I know that you have these complaints or these critiques of the game, and feedback that you can provide both between players and GMs is very important for an ongoing positive experience. But if it is, again, detracting from the play experience or just isn't really serving any beneficial purpose, then you can bring in Rule Zero as, okay, well, this is just suspension of disbelief. This is the way the world works. You're just going to have to accept it so that we can move on and continue with the game. So I hope that is all a little clearer as to how Rule Zero works and how it can and should be implemented to its greatest benefit. And I hope that I will see you all next time. Take care, my fellow scholars.